Hello, looks like that next video is now. I'm working on some planter boxes I made about 5 years ago. The pots that I put on top of it to hold the plants have rusted through. So let's get into it. So this is the plant stand I'm talking about. It's got a base, a metal section to hold up the pot, and the pot that goes on top. The base was originally meant as a garden feature, and it was designed to have a glass ball on top. The metal pot on top was not that thick, and it didn't take long for it just to rust completely out. And you can see that by just looking at the bottom. And I painted it this color. My wife wants the new ones to be copper, but the bottoms have just rusted completely out. You can see it was just zip tied on. And the base is really pretty heavy, so it wouldn't rot the deck out. And I'm gonna have to pressure wash this and put another coat of paint on them. This is gonna be the new top, and she wants me to paint that copper. I am gonna unscrew this from the base. Freeze that up. That means I can take this, figure out where I want to put this. I'm going to do like I did the last one, and I am just going to zip tie this, which means putting some holes. Now I need to find out how big my zip tie is that I'm going to use so I can size my hole properly. Those were the ones I had used last time, and they held up for years, so I think I'm going to try the same size again. I think that's what I'm going to use to put my holes in it.
It's just an inexpensive 1/2-inch chisel. I'm going to make my marks a little bit bigger, and then I'll come back with a small drill bit and put a hole on each side where the chisel will go through, so the chisel does a better job cutting the metal and not tearing it. Okay, so the first hole's drilled. Let me double check the chisel. Now I'm going to drill the hole that'll go on the other side of the zip tie. I've got 2 of these planter stands, so I'm going to need to drill holes in 2 different pots. I'm using the holes in the first pot as a template, and I'm just going to drill the same holes in the second pot. I thought I was going to need a hammer to get this chisel to punch the slots in the pots, but just putting a lot of pressure downward seemed to cut right through the metal. So I'm just going to use my hand, and I'm going to push this chisel through each one of the centers of those holes.
Alrighty.
Okay, it's time to get ready to paint these, and I've decided that I like the gold colored handles, so I'm going to tape over those so I don't get any spray paint on the handles. So this is 3M's blue painter tape, and the only advice I have is the tighter you put it on, the harder it is to get off. Okay, this wraps it up. This will be the 4th handle.
I've had these quite a while, so I'm going to start out doing a primer of gold and then coming across and doing a second coat with this copper, and then I'm going to put a finish coat of the hammered on there. I've had real good luck with this hammered outside. Like always, the first thing to do is to shake for probably about 3 or 4 minutes.
So the directions on the can said to hold it about 8 to 12 inches away from whatever you're spraying. And I'm probably doing it a little bit closer because it's fairly windy and I'm trying to get the paint to end up on the planter instead of just floating away in the air. Try not to hold the can in one spot too long because you'll end up getting a drip or a run, and just try to get a good even coverage. And that's all I'm doing. And I'll do the same thing for the other planter also. So the only place I'm really glopping on the paint is the bottom. And that's where those holes are that I punched through. I just want to make sure that they don't rust.
Okay, there's one can empty. Dries in 15 to 20 minutes. Can handled in 1 hour. Recoat surface within 4 hours. I might want to put some gloves on. I've got just a hint of copper on my hands. It's been about 15 minutes and it's time for the second coat.
So I decided to put a glove on the hand that I'm using to hold the pot and move it around. And I'm going to spray these pots until this can is empty.
All right, there's a second coat and a second can, and the final one will be this hammered, which should give it a uniform kind of dimpled look, which I have found works a lot better on metal. It eliminates the runs and stuff.
If you take your time, you really can get good results out of a can of spray paint.
So that's it for today. 3 coats of paint, 1 gold as a primer, 1 copper, and then 1 hammered copper to even out the tone. I'll let those dry overnight, and tomorrow maybe we can get these pieces together. Well, these have had a chance to dry overnight, and I think they turned out pretty good. Next thing to do is take the tape off the handles. Blue tape is sticking really, really well. All right, one side.
And through the magic of editing, we now have all 4 handles done.
All right, that's our second one. Next thing to do is get the pressure washer out and get ready to pressure wash everything. In addition to the 2 metal pieces, I also am going to go ahead and pressure wash and paint 2 benches. So this is where I'm going to do the pressure washing. And I have brought a rug out here. So that way when I'm pressure washing, I don't have a bunch of dirt and stuff get blown up on top of what I'm pressure washing with the pressure washer. That's a lot of pressure washing words. So the next step would be to get the pressure washer out. There's little assembly required on the pressure washer. That's screwed in.
Attach the extension wand. Attach the high pressure hose. Can't make a good video without breaking a few eggs.
And the last thing we need is a hose. Always check the oil on this thing. Plenty of oil. It's got about a half a tank of gas. We'll go ahead and top it off. So on this Craftsman, they did a pretty good job of making it simple to use. They've got 4 spots for you to put your tips and a description of what those 4 spots are for.
So I'm going to use the yellow tip. It's a very tight spray. It's aggressive and will knock any loose paint off.
The last little bit is to put in the tip. This is what the bottom of the other pot looks like. You can see where I had drilled holes and used zip ties to hold it together.
Here's another view of the zip ties from inside the pot.
And I don't think this base is as bad as the other one as far as the paint peeling on it. But either way, we're going to get it taken care of. I've always had really good luck starting this up. Usually a pull or 3 and it gets going. But once it starts, it's going to be noisy. So turn it on.
I don't have any film footage of me cleaning the black portion of the plant stand, so we're just going to have to use this bench as an example. So I make sure I hit every metal surface, keeping the nozzle about 6 to 12 inches away from it. So here's what they look like after the pressure washing and before I give them a light sanding.
I painted these when I built them. They're not doing too bad. Just like the pots, it looks like the most place they have the rust is where that water comes from. Watering the plants all the time.
Pressure washer does a really good job of knocking off any loose paint, but you still need to lightly sand all the surfaces and make sure there's no surface rust. So that way the paint that you're going to put on it will adhere and stick.
All right, I sanded everything. It's time to start putting the paint on. It's my personal opinion that if you're going to paint stuff that's outside, you need to use an oil-based paint and it needs to be gloss-based. And the reason why is because you're trying to keep water from getting through the paint to the metal. And if you use a flat paint or if you use a latex paint, the moisture, the water is going to be able to wick through the paint and get to what's below it, which is going to make your metal rust. Oil-based paint repels water, and the shinier the finish, gloss, the more it's going to repel water. So that's just my personal opinions. I've already stirred this up real good. The only thing left to do now is to use the mineral spirits and just wipe everything down real quick before I start. I also took the leaf blower and blew everything off. The big areas are where I sanded. That's the big areas I'm after. Unfortunately, I have quite a few pieces to do, so I've got quite a few minutes of painting ahead of me. I'm using a 25 millimeter brush, which is about 1 inch. And it's just going to be tedious and time consuming.
The consistency of this oil-based paint is pretty thick.
I should go put some rubber gloves on is what I should do. I'm gonna have paint all over me.
I'm really loading my paintbrush up with paint and I'm putting the paint on thick. About the only thing I'm trying to do is keep there from being any visible runs in the paint. The thicker, the better. I showed you 26 seconds of me painting the first one, but it actually took 7.5 minutes.
Another reason why I like to use a paintbrush when I'm painting things is there might be a little bit of dirt or there might be a little bit of the sanded material on here. And if you use a paintbrush, you are going to work that into the paint and into the surface. If you're spray painting something and you put a nice coat of paint on top of a powder, think of putting flour all over your countertop and then spray painting the countertop. The first time you go to wipe it, all the paint's going to come up because instead of adhering to the countertop, it's just going to adhere to that powder that's on top. So that is the reason why I like to brush. It's not as fast, it's not as quick, but I know it's going to be on there.
And me. I'm regularly taking a rag with mineral spirits and wiping the paint off my hands as I go. All right, I have finished painting the second one, and I'm going to put this off to the side in the sun to dry, and then we'll pick it back up from there.
But let's see how the planter stands are looking. Those are looking pretty good, and they have dried well. And they have a nice glossy finish is what I was after. I always put 2 coats on stuff, and that's probably a good thing. You can see right there where I missed a little tiny spot. So second coat today.
Well, here I am putting a second coat on these 2 pieces, and I'm filming it in something called hyperlapse. If I could just move this fast in real life, boy, think of the things you could get accomplished. So if you're into photography, it looks like it took about 35 seconds to film 15 minutes worth of work. And that would be on my DJI Pocket 2.
There we go. These have been drying for a day and they look really good. So it's going to be time to assemble everything. So the first thing I've got to do is mount these to the stands. So I made these a couple years ago out of leftover materials from the greenhouse. This is some decking material and it's fairly pricey. I hated to see it go to waste. And I wanted to make something interesting, so I cut it up into a cool geometric pattern. The base is just pressure treated 2x6s. And I drilled some screws through it and ground off the tips, so when it sits on the deck, it's actually got a little bit of a space underneath it to let it breathe. Otherwise it would rot the deck out.
The stand is actually held in place with 3 deck screws or construction screws, depending on what you want to call them. I'm just lining the stand up with the holes that are already drilled into the base.
There's the second one. Now ready for a pot. We're just going to use 3 zip ties.
I'll put a zip tie in each one of the 3 corners and put that on top of the stand. I'll loop the zip tie around the piece of metal on the stand and push it back up through the adjacent hole. I'll do that on all 3 sides.
I hope that provides enough light. We're just going to slip these through and pull them to snug. We'll just snip the ends off. And that's what the bottom looks like. You can see the little holes. They also will help with drainage. If the plant gets overwatered or there's a torrential rain, it'll allow the water to drain out. Okay, let's get this on.
Okay, this is the second pot, and this time we're going to film from the bottom so you can see what I'm doing. I'm going to take that zip tie and I'm going to wrap it around the stand, and then I'm going to push it back up through the second hole. And I'll do that 3 times just like before. I will snug up the zip ties and cut the extra off.
Okay, it's time for the big reveal. There you have the final product. And there you have it. Another project is completed. 2 planter stands, all refreshed for my wife. And I think they look pretty good, if I do say myself. A quick recap: we disassembled, we painted the pots, we painted the bottoms, we cleaned everything up and reassembled. It took 5 days, not 5 days straight, just 5 days. We had to let the paint dry in between coats. We had to pressure wash the metal bracket. But all in all, it's done. Well, I guess that means we're concluded for today's video. Like, subscribe, check out the playlist, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.